Hey, good morning, everybody. I am very glad you're here. I'm Rita Hickman. I'm a body mind expert and shiatsu massage therapist. But what I specialize in is helping women who are in toxic and narcissistic relationships. I help them stand up to their abuser. I help them stand up for themselves to narcissists and their insanity and learn how to do it in a graceful, loving, confident way. So today we're talking about gaslighting. So gaslighting is a term that's been bandied about for a few decades now. It started because of a movie called Gaslight, and it was about how a husband was poisoning his wife and convincing her that she was crazy, when in reality he was in the process of killing her and making her believe that there was nothing wrong, that it was all in her head, that she didn't need help, that she was imagining things. So that term has been used to describe people, other typically men or women, who use gaslighting in relationships in order to stay in control or get what they want. So a typical example of gaslighting is when you find something, let's say something in a pocket or something that you didn't expect to find. And there's a perfectly innocent explanation for it and how you must be crazy and you must be making it up. You know, calling somebody crazy and saying that they must be making things up is kind of the typical things you're wanting to look for. You're wanting to look for someone who isn't listening to your point of view ever and instead putting all of the blame on you. So it could be things that they said. I never said that. I would never say that. You must be making it up. Could be things that they did. I never did that. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see it. Do you see it? Does anybody else see it? No, I don't see it. It's a continual brainwashing of someone in relationship to make them think that they're the ones who have a lot of issues. I had a wonderful client way before I met her. She had been in a domestic violence situation, and her husband was a cop. And so there were guns around the house, and she had two young kids. And he had convinced her so much that she was the one that had problems, that she was the one who was making up that she felt threatened and that she was crazy. And so, of course, he was super supportive of her going to see a therapist. And then by going to see a therapist, she realized that she was in a very toxic, abusive relationship. That's typically what happens. So, gaslighting many times can, if you accept it, if you sort of embrace it a little bit, it causes you to get the help that you need, to get the ideas and the support and the care that you've been looking for. Because the nemesis to gaslighting is when you've got people on your side. You can't be convinced that you're crazy because you've got validation, not only of your own eyes, records and recordings, which many women end up doing to prove that they're not crazy, but you don't need to prove you're not crazy. You just need to realize what the truth is and kind of own it. And having support and having in your corner, having people behind you who've got your back is one of the best ways to do it. Because gaslighting really only works in emotional isolation. It only works when it's your word against mine. And although many times many narcissists have this ability to convince everybody else that you're crazy too, so you end up in this situation where you've got multiple people saying, oh no, they would never do that. You must be making it up. You must be too sensitive. You must be over dramatizing. This happens a lot in family relationships too, where let's say you've got a number of siblings and one sibling says, oh no, everything was fine. And another sibling says, yes, but I was being molested or abused or, diminished or made to be the scapegoat all the time. And the other siblings didn't see it. This is one way that a lot of sexual abuse does happen, is because the child thinks that it's all their fault because it's a secret, it's an isolation, you can't tell anybody. You're traumatized and reacting. You don't know if you're right or wrong. So, most effective gaslighting really happens with children. And then when people become adults, they're able to sort of tell, which people have been traumatized in the past and they're attracted to that, which people that are easier to manipulate, let's say, because they're always questioning themselves. For me, for example, I didn't trust my intuition, at least until I was in my 40s, because I was so overwhelmed. I was so inside of myself that I didn't have any good intuition. I didn't know what was right or wrong, or good or bad, or up and down, and I didn't trust myself. It's kind of the core of gaslighting, is when someone doesn't quite trust themselves for some reason, then what happens is they end up believing the narcissist. They end up believing the abuser who's telling them, yes, you are crazy. Yes, you are making things up. You are oversensitive. And these are usually messages that people have heard their entire lives. There are many people who don't know what it's like, and that could be you, who don't know what it's like to be able to be truly authentic with another person, open and safe, where you can be vulnerable, where your point of view is appreciated, where you're respected, irregardless of what you're feeling or thinking, where someone actually listens to what you have to say and doesn't automatically react or blame you. Many narcissists, let's say the narcissists who are more borderline personality disorder, people like to think that this sort of stuff is strategic. They look at someone who does gaslighting and they think, aha, they're doing it on purpose. For many people who suffer with BPD, what happens is they go into an automatic pattern. They go into their automatic fight or flight, and gaslighting is one of the tools that they use. Let's say lying. If someone is somehow afraid of being caught because in the past, every time they did something, no matter how innocent or how not innocent it was, people blew up, people gave them consequences, people destroyed them. This happens a lot when BPD people are in childhood. As I said, sexual abuse or domestic violence, things like that. There's a lot of secrets. And so the child ends up put into this position where they really do think it's all their fault. They really do think they're the cause that their parents got divorced. They're the cause that something bad happened to them. Or the abuser saying, no, no, this is good. This is me caring about you. And the child is screaming inside. When there's that break of what's happening on the outside does not match what's happening on the inside, it creates a big mistrust. And so many people who've had severe sexual abuse, especially, because that's a whole different animal, when they've had that, they end up with more borderline personality disorder sorts of qualities, and they don't trust anybody. And so they lie about the smallest things. They lie about whether they paid bills. They lie about where they were. They lie about what they've been doing or who they've been with. They lie about whether the sky is blue. They lie about whether the grass is green. It's this unconscious protective mechanism to avoid conflict, to try to find some way to avoid pain or hurt. It's a recreation usually of stuff that happened in their kid, when they were children. Now, if you were abused as a child, either emotionally or sexually or physically abused, you probably have a good handle on this. You probably have a good understanding of how you can't always tell the truth. I mean, in my family, I had been taught that because it was a volatile situation, just don't say anything. Just don't say anything. And so I ended up living a life that I just didn't say anything. I just didn't tell people what was going on. I didn't tell people all the little details because I was scared, because I was anxious, because I was terrified, actually, that if I told the truth, that there would be dire consequences. These are things that can carry over. And many times people who are innocent or people who only had a halfway bad childhood, but learned how to be a good woman, learned that they needed to be nice no matter what, you end up naively walking into a relationship with someone who's very traumatized, with someone who has a lot of issues going on and a lot of pain. And it's more than you really should have to handle. If someone's to that level where they're gaslighting you, then they need some professional help. And if they're not going to get it, then you need professional help. Because the way to break out of gaslighting is to break out of the secrets, is to stop telling the secrets about what's going on with you, about what you're thinking and what you're feeling. Now, you can't necessarily tell the narcissist because it creates more drama, it creates more craziness. But you can find other people who will listen to you. They exist. People who you can open up about how hurt or angry or terrified you are, things that just happened, or how traumatized you feel, without being laughed at, without being minimized or belittled. Because trauma begets more trauma many times. So when you have a child who has, let's say, borderline personality disorder, then they struggle with how they handle it. And out of their struggles, they end up traumatizing other people. Now, this isn't true for everybody. There's this old adage of, well, abuse, they must have come from an abusive, family. They must have come from abusive situation. But remember, we're talking about different siblings. We're talking about different people in the family. And every person in the family will have their own experience. Some people, they sail right through abusive families, either because they weren't the one, that was abused, or they were able to get help early on in their life. In my life, I've been married to my husband for a long time. We've been together since we've been 20. And when I was 20, I walked into his family, and they had been in 12-step programs for years and years by then. And I finally discovered at 20 that there was a space where you could start talking about how you feel and what you think and what's going on without having any judgmentalism. And that was an important foundation for me. It helped me realize that the secrets that I was living in, the world I was living in, it didn't have to be that way. And that's how we start to break out of it. So if you've got a narcissist who is gaslighting you, who's telling you every which way but loose that you're crazy, and maybe because they're super nice to everybody else, because they've got that facade, they've got the ability to not act that way, except when they're in private and stressed out, and you end up being the victim, they will convince other people that you're the one who has problems. Because why would somebody lie about that? Why would somebody lie about that? It's interesting. Victims end up being victimized over and over and over, not because there's something wrong with them or not because they deserve it, but because of the secrets, because they typically don't realize there's help. They don't realize there's community. They don't realize there's another way to do things. They don't realize they don't have to be alone. And they don't realize that there are people who aren't going to judge them. There are people who aren't going to call you bad or crazy, because they understand. They understand what it's like to be either as a kid living in a trauma unstable situation, or have stumbled into it, or been a part of it as an adult. And then you feel trapped because now once again, you've got responsibilities and you've got people depending upon you. And women, many women who come from those situations, they're taught to put themselves last. They're taught to take care of everybody else. They're taught that other people's needs are way more important than theirs. And that's how we get into this cycle. We put ourselves at the end, and what happens is it just perpetuates the abuse. It perpetuates it over and over. But when we start getting support, when we start breaking out of our secrets, that's how we make the change. That's how we get the strength and the confidence to stand up to a narcissist. We learn different skills. We look past their behavior to the person that they are, and we look at what's really going on. Many times what goes on with narcissistic relationships are both partners don't understand the dynamics. They don't understand what's really underneath the behavior, what's underneath the triggering, what's underneath my triggering, what's underneath your triggering, and how to manage it. Because when you have some good insight as to why a narcissist behaves the way that they do, and it's typically because they've got all sorts of wacky things going on in their head, and it's protection at all costs. When you realize they're coming from a place of needing to control, needing to protect, no matter what, you're able to start to navigate through it. You're able to start to make good decisions, and you stop getting triggered, because it's no longer about how you're wrong or how you're bad or how you're crazy. It's about what's really going on, the reality of the situation. which is someone who is very nice and compassionate and empathic and is used to putting themselves last and taking care of other people. And we're taught a long time ago that it's their responsibility to make other people happy. They end up in relationships with people that want to be just that. They want to take advantage. They want someone who's going to be nice. They want someone who will give them everything. They want someone who will be forgiving and flexible and understanding. They want that. And that's how they're drawn to it. So if you find yourself in these relationships and you're tired of them and you're sick of being told you're crazy, then reach out. There's a beautiful support group we work with. I've got a whole free library of these live streams that you can search and read and watch. And we also do one-on-one coaching with women so that you have someone holding your hand when you first start to realize that you can stand up for yourself. You have someone holding your hand that's right behind you that helps you learn how to navigate other people's mental health issues without getting destroyed and while protecting yourself, and many times helping your kids understand how to navigate it too. Because if you don't understand, you're going to keep being victimized by it. But once you start to get that self-esteem and that confidence, that real knowing of how you're going to handle things and what you're going to do, it's easier and easier and easier to set boundaries and to create good relationships, whether it's with a narcissist, although that's an enormous amount of work, or whether you choose to leave and find a relationship that's much healthier and much easier and much more nourishing and supportive. Either way, we've got your back. Okay. So reach out, lots of resources. And I absolutely look forward to talking to you again soon. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.